All right, folks, please take your seats. We're getting ready to start.
Yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shana Tova.
And Shana Tova.
I am really glad that we are all able to be here together today. It is particularly wonderful to welcome everybody to our services on this morning where we came so close to being really in touch with the power of creation. Whether you are here in the sanctuary at TCS or welcoming the new year somewhere else and joining us remotely, we are glad to be together as one community on this sacred day. As a reminder for those of you who are on YouTube, in the same email that gave you the link to connect to services, there was also a link with a PDF of the prayers that we would be saying today. So if you would like to have the words available, you can click on that link and get those texts. How wonderful it is to return to our community, to our sanctuary, to our services at this sacred time. How wonderful it is to return once more to our holy days with their majestic themes and their profound reflection. How wonderful it is to return to our tradition, which enables us to make meaning out of the mundane, to find purpose in the profane, and to see holiness in the humble. We reach these spiritual heights best when we are active participants, not merely quiet observers. Prayer is never meant to be a spectator sport, and especially not on the high holy days. So as we begin our service today, let me encourage everyone to join in as much as you can in the singing, in the reading, in the praying. And as much as we want everybody to join in, please do not add to the music with your ringtones. Please make sure that your cell phones are off, or at least silenced, before we begin. And one more quick reminder that there is no eating or chewing gum in the sanctuary, so if you are, we ask you please to dispose of it now. The melody with which we began may be most familiar from singing the Shana Tova Tikatevu, which means, may you be written for a good year. In this Hebrew, the word you is plural. It means all of us. It reminds us that we are best. Our community is best. Our year is best when we join together. So we should begin by reconnecting with the other members of our temple family. So let me invite you please to stand up and greet the people around you. Introduce yourselves, wish each other Shana Tova. Thank you very much. Please be seated. We continue on page 4 of the Machzor. Page 4. This is the season of God the ruler. We celebrate the ultimate rule of the divine, the coherence of all the disparate parts of the universe in one related cosmos, a realm in which the power of God could relate all people to each other and every person to every corner of the natural world. Not for us the rule of lesser powers who govern by keeping many people out rather than drawing all people in. This day we renew our vision of how the world should be governed, and though too often we are tempted to withdraw from concern, at this new year we determine we shall help bring that ideal governance about. We shall help relate our own corner of the world to a rule that is divine. To do that, to help to change the world we know, we need to change ourselves as well. To renew ourselves, we need be conscious of our faults, of the hurts we do to others, the hurts we do to ourselves. We need be conscious of the mitzvot, the deeds our people has believed that God desires, which are open to us, though we have been closed to them. And so in this judgment season, we shall look critically into ourselves as we look critically at the world, that we may sharpen all our faculties for the job of renewal ahead. Hayom Harat Olam, at this moment is the universe conceived. At this moment, all things are possible, and all our dreams, all the best and strong and loving corners of ourselves shall rule. We continue on page 77 with the blessings for the miracles of everyday life.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nasen v'sech v'nina lavchin ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani betzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hanotein la'ya'ef koach.
Today, on Rosh Hashanah, the world was conceived. Today, on Shabbat, the world was completed. Today, every day, the world begins again. We see it new, more fully. We encounter an old branch of a tree we knew for years as though its leaves and bark had never brushed our face before. Today, Shabbat, the world is perfect, not for us to change. Tradition asks us not to break the branch that bruised our walk, but let its leaves glisten in the same sun that warms us. Rosh Hashanah reminds us that everything is to grow, to change, to rise and flower and wax wax as full and fat and gorgeous as it can become. Shabbat reminds us that everything that is has value just as it is, with no change. Leaf without flower, seed without stalk, each of us with all our imperfections. Today the world began, charged to become everything that lies within the power of its creation. Today the world is complete, charged to embrace even the weakness of a life brushed by God. On page 88, a special psalm, a special song for Shabbat. The Hebrew begins 8 lines from the bottom. The words mean, the just will blossom like the date palm. They will stand tall like the cedar of Lebanon. Tzaddik katamar.
Tzaddik katamar yifrach ke'erez balbanon yizkeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun b'seva deshenim v'ra'ananim yiyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri velo havlatabo.
We turn to page 111 and we rise for Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah B'yamad yivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei lechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala v'zman karim v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei amaya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal Shemei dekucha le'ela ule'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'alma be'meru.
Page 113, Baruch Hu.
Yai da dai 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 yai da dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 Baruch Hu Adonai Mavorach Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated. And let's turn to page 115 and continue together in the middle of the page. You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light, and from nothing at all create the darkness which lets them shine. You fashion harmony from all that you have made, and from nothing at all create the chaos that lets harmony be heard. Your vessels pour light upon the universe, flooding the cracks in our darkness with the beams of your compassion. If we could walk upon that lighted path, we could perceive in a world that has turned old a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made just this moment, just for us. How much of life reveals your presence? How much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon our sands? You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives the delicate vessels which are our light. Page 121.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Bachuto, Le'olam Vaed, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, B'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha, Ve'hayu advarim ha'ele, Asher Anochi mitzavecha, Hayom al levavecha, V'shinatam levanecha, V'dibarta b'ham, B'shivtecha b'veitecha, Uv'lechtecha v'derech, Uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha, Uv'kshartam le'ot al yadecha, V'hayu letotafot bein einecha, Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, U'visharecha.
Page 126 in the second paragraph.
Leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihyot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Page 128. All Jews have their own Egypt. We must each free ourselves in our own way from the bonds that keep us from our true integrity. When that bond is burst, when we have ousted the illegitimate masters from our minds, then one day we each can come to God, each on our own ground, within our own flame, but each to the same ultimate reality whose power rules the sea, the earth, and each person's freely loving soul.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha ne'edar ba'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele, shira chadasha, shibechu geolim leshimcha, al sfat hayam yachad kulam, hodu ve'imlichu ve'amiru, Adonai imloch le'olam vaed. As Rabbi Ken mentioned before, the High Holy Days has its own set of melodies. And this is true both in terms of songs and in terms of the way that we sing prayers. Even prayers that have the same words that we might say on Shabbat or another holiday. The word for that in Jewish tradition is nusach. The biggest example of nusach for the High Holy Days is the melody that we just sang at the beginning of this service, that Rabbi Ken mentioned, L'Shana Tova Tikatevu, and we also sang it without words before the service, to begin the service, and to begin Baruch, and it showed up in Michamocha. It shows up in a lot of different places. That's not the only one, of course, though. And we're going to do the Amidah now, which has largely the same words, although it has insertions special for the High Holy Days. But the words that are the same as ones we're used to have a special melody for the High Holy Days. So I invite you to join in as you're able and to take in the serious and majesty of this special High Holy Day melody. Please rise, page 130. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, v'zocher chasdei avot, v'imahot, u'mevi go'el livnei v'neihem, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם עזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים, אתה רב להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים מרחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. מי לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
Please be seated. Page 133. We shall affirm the mighty holiness of this day, a day of awe and dread, for upon it is God's rule exalted and the holy throne established in covenantal love.
When we really begin a new year, it is decided, and when we actually repent, it is determined.
Who shall be truly alive, and who shall merely exist?
Who shall be tormented by the fire of ambition, and whose hopes shall be quenched by the waters of failure?
Who shall be pierced by the sharp sword of envy, and who shall be torn by the wild beast of resentment?
Who shall hunger for companionship, and who shall thirst for approval?
Who shall be shattered by storms of change, and who shall be plagued by the pressures of conformity?
Who shall be strangled by insecurity, and who shall be beaten into submission?
Who shall be content with their lot, and who shall go wandering in search of satisfaction?
Who shall be serene, and who shall be distraught?
Together, but teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, repentance, prayer, and just action, have the power to change the character of our lives. Therefore, let us repent, pray, and do right, so that this may be a genuinely new year of life.
ונתנה תוקף קדושת היום, כי הוא נורא ואיום. ובוא תינשא מלכותך, וייכון בחסד כיסאך, ותשב עליו באמת.
Let us declare the holy power of this day. It is awe-filled, mighty. Your sovereignty is raised up even higher today, for now you take your place with truth, though your throne is based in love, which you sealed into the covenant you made with those who came before us. In truth, you are the court, judge and prosecutor, expert witness, scribe, bearer of the seal, enumerator, the one who calls to account. Before you, all things forgotten present themselves as you open the book of recollections, which reads itself aloud, for the seal of every person's hand is in it. Page 138.
בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. כמה יעברון, וכמה ייבראון. מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי וקיצו ומי לא וקיצו. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. מי והאש ומי והמים, מי והחרב ומי והחיה, מי והרעב ומי והצמא. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. מי ורש ומי ומגפה, מי וחניקה ומי וסקילה, מי ינוח ומי ינוע. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. בראש השנה ייכתבון, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמון. מי שקט ומי טרף, מי שלם ומי יתייסר, מי עני ומי אשר, מי שפל ומי ירום, ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירין את רוע הגזירה. ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירין את רוע הגזירה. ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירין את רוע הגזירה.
But teshuvah, prayer, and charitable acts will move us past the pain of the decree. Page 141, please rise.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקול ברעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסים לעומת שרפים לעומתם, ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים ועינינו תראנה מלכותך כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך על ידי דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד כי על מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך הקדוש.
We continue now with some time for our own private, personal prayers. If you wish to follow the liturgy of the Machzor, it goes from page 146 to page 158, or you can look inside yourself for the words and prayers of your own heart and your own soul. When you've had as much time as you'd like, you may be seated.
Shalom Tova Uvracha Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Sim Shalom Uvracha Shalom Tova Uvracha. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, v'rachamim. Sim shalom. Tova uvracha. Sim shalom. Tova uvracha. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amecha sim shalom. Tova uvracha. Sim shalom. Tova uvracha. B'sefer chayim beracha v'shalom ufarnasa tova. B'sefer chayim beracha v'shalom ufarnasa tova. Nizacher v'nikatev lefanecha. Nizacher v'nikatev lefanecha. Anachnu v'chol amcha beit Yisrael. Anachnu v'chol amcha beit Yisrael. L'chayim tovim u'shalom. L'chayim tovim u'shalom.
It is a great blessing to me and to all of us to have David Rothberg leading our services as my partner up here. It's also a blessing to me and to all of us to have Craig Barger as our congregational president. It's my pleasure to call on Craig to offer some words this morning.
Thank you, Rabbi. David, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Happy New Year and welcome to 5784. It brings me immense joy to see so many congregants and friends here today to help us celebrate. My sincere appreciation to the Ritual Committee, led by Deb Schechter and Heather Lambrecht, and to Rabbi Carr and cantoral soloist David Rothberg for organizing this year's celebration. As I sat at my kitchen counter trying to fashion a worthy High Holy Day address, I realized that this would be my 5th such address to this community. I fear that I am running out of creative things to say. I worry that I don't quite know what to say that is riveting or thought-provoking. Then I realized riveting and thought-provoking, those words are Rabbi Carr's responsibility, not mine. I do know that my responsibility in part is to extend my heartfelt gratitude to you for your faith in my leadership ability and for your support of the members of our board of directors. Despite the many, many challenges we have faced, I must admit that I found the role of president to be incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. I joke with some of you that after 41 years of employment in the juvenile corrections system, I was well prepared for the job of president. As we celebrate the new year, our tradition calls upon us to put aside our day-to-day concerns and to take time to consider what really matters in our lives. It is time to consider our actions, their impact, and our responsibility to improve ourselves and our community. It is time for introspection and reflection. It is time to reflect on our 4 core values. We value innovating education, learning and teaching our Jewish traditions creatively to promote meaningful self-discovery for our members of all ages. We value building community, growing and strengthening the bonds of family, friendship, and community within the temple and beyond. We value honoring individuality, welcoming and celebrating our community's diverse backgrounds, perspectives, and religious practices, so that all may feel comfortable within our Jewish home. We value drawing meaning from Judaism, looking to Jewish culture, spirituality, and learning as a source of guidance, insight, and meaning. We value upholding our social responsibility, working as individuals and together to improve the world inside and outside our temple. It is also time to recognize and appreciate our professional staff. Rabbi Kenneth Carr, cantoral soloist David Rothberg, Education Director Jerry Robbins, Temple Administrator Merrill Levinson, School and Welcoming Committee Administrative Assistant Denise Morgan, and Bookkeeper Brenda Leonard. Thank you all for your commitment to TCS and for helping to keep our doors open. It is also time to recognize and thank our board of directors for volunteering their time, their energy, their thoughtfulness, and their expertise to help me lead and guide this community. These caring and enthusiastic volunteers are my partners in maintaining and strengthening our temple. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge and thank some members of our congregation who go above and beyond to support this family. To Alicia Dancy for her extraordinary efforts as chair of both the school committee and the reopening task force. To Marty McIntosh for stepping up to chair the school committee this year. For Adam and Teresa Kempner for the incredibly successful TCS road race. To Ruth Albert and Rona Schlotnick for their efforts to reinvigorate senior high. To Rachel Colchimiro and Paul Kaufman for leading Sisterhood and Brotherhood. To Michael Kamens and Lou Levine for their constant efforts to maintain our IT systems. And to Jen Delaney and the fundraising committee, which is planning a progressive dinner this fall, a pickleball tournament, and a free art and a fine art and travel auction with the Fuller Art Craft Museum. To David Jelinek for his successful coordination of the comedy night and raffle. To Joe Emerson for his leadership of the Welcoming Committee and his very successful marketing plan, which has increased our exposure and drawn interest from the larger Jewish community in our area. And as a result, we have seen an increase in our membership numbers year over year. Finally, thank you to Rhonda Jelinek for her incredible efforts as our treasurer, When we asked Rhonda to take on the job of treasurer, one of the things my wife Elaine did was to take her aside and say, you know, if you take this job, you're going to become Craig's best friend. And that's true. I have said many times over the past 5 years that some of the wonderful aspects of our congregation are our generosity, our culture of philanthropy, and our willingness to help and support one another. Last fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, through a combination of donations like the High Holy Day Appeal, the Hanukkah Appeal, and small individual donations throughout the year, and our fundraising, like the TSCS Road Race and the Comedy Night and Raffle, we raised in excess of $143,000. I know that you all would be very disappointed if I did not continue to bring up some finances. As you heard from our treasurer, Rhonda Jelinek, at our annual congregational meeting, our income from dues and tuition does not cover all of our expenses. Like most nonprofits, we rely on donations and other fundraising activities. Our best guess for this fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024, is that we will need to raise in excess of $160,000, much of which I hope will come from our High Holy Day Appeal. We have already received a very significant and generous pledge from a congregate family who remains to remain anonymous. But they sent along the following message. We find great satisfaction in supporting our temple, our rabbi and cantoral soloist, our school, and our teachers. We encourage everyone to join us in the joy of supporting TCS. With these words in mind, Elaine and I have another challenge for this community. Between today and October 31st, we will match, dollar for dollar, every donation you make to benefit TCS up to a maximum of $40,000. You know us, we do not do this for accolades or naming rights. We do this to support a community, a family, a synagogue that is special. We want to see TCS continue to grow and to prosper. We have faith in this congregation, faith that you will rise to this challenge once again, faith that you will contribute what you can afford, as you have done so many times before. In closing, please accept my most sincere thanks for your continued generosity and your support. We keep the doors of TCS open because of your membership, your volunteerism, and your donations, both big and small. I wish you all a healthy and sweet new year.
Thank you, Craig, so much for your personal example of leadership and involvement, your dedication, your commitment to this community. You all see me and David up here a lot more often than you see Craig, but he is here so many hours, days during the week, put so much of himself into this place, this community. And that was even before this really generous challenge grant that he and Elaine have offered us. So we really appreciate all of your leadership in so many ways. Thank you, Craig. We are ready now to continue with Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for reading the Torah.
What is the Torah? 2 wooden sticks, the skin of a kosher animal, and some chemicals mixed together. That's all it takes to write a Torah. That and 4,000 years of wandering, searching, suffering, learning, following, leading, loving, blessing. 2 wooden sticks, the skin of a kosher animal, and some chemicals mixed together. That's all it takes to write a Torah. That and 4,000 years of longing, teaching, hoping, weeping, remembering, planting, praying, praising. 2 wooden sticks and the skin of a kosher animal and some chemicals mixed together. That's all it takes to write a Torah. That and 4,000 years of living with God looking over your shoulder.
For the honor of an aliyah to open and close the ark, we call, Craig, you could have just stayed up here. We call Craig Berger. And for the honor of holding and carrying the Torah, we call Brian Delano. Page 163.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, ve'en kemaasecha, malchutecha malchut, kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai himloch, le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, av harachamim, eitiv avirtzoncha et Zion, tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, ki b'cha levad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisa adon olamim.
We continue in our supplements on page 2. Please rise.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu. V'yalol aleinu v'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, gale dever v'cherev v'ra'am me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, kale kotar umastin me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova.
Back in the Machzor, we continue on page 158. Page 158. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have done wrong before you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Ein lanu melech ela ata.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have no sovereign except you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, let renewed goodness fill the year ahead.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shlach Refuah Shlema Lechole Amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, send healing to all who are ill.
Avinu Malkeinu, Hafer Atzat Oivenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, overturn the plots of those who bear us enmity.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Dever V'cherev V'ra'av U'shvi U'mashchit Mibnei Britecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, remove from all your children disease, war, famine, exile, and destruction.
Avinu Malkeinu, Slach U'machal L'chol Avonotenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, forgive and pardon all our wrongdoing.
Avinu Malkeinu, Hachazirenu B'tshuva Shlema Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, return us to you in earnest repentance.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu B'Sefer Chayim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in your book for a life of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu B'Sefer Parnasa V'Chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of sustenance.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu B'Sefer Zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of meritorious acts.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu B'Sefer Shlicha U'Mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of forgiveness and reconciliation.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu V'Al Ol Aleinu V'Tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, show mercy to us and to our children.
Avinu Malkeinu, Ptach Sha'arei Shamayim L'Tfilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh L'Ma'an Ba'e Va'esh U'Vamayim Al Kiddush Shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, do it for the sake of those who went through fire and water to honor your name. Avinu Malkeinu, Vonenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vonenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Onenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Onenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu ma'asim.
Page 164.
Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, Ve'afutzu oivecha, Ve'anusu mesanecha mipanecha, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kdushato. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע, וחטא ונקה. אדוני, אדוני, רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים, ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע, וחטא ונקה. אדוני, אדוני, רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים, ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע, וחטא ונקה.
On page 165 at the bottom, please repeat after David.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'norah shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'norah shemo. Gadlu Adonai iti, uneromima shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedola v'hagevora v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Lecha Adonai hamamlacha ve'amid na'aseh lechol lerosh romemu romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu ve'ishtachavu lehadom raglav kadoshu Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ishtachavu, ve'ishtachavu, lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. You may be seated.
Hashanah begins on page 171. It is comes from Genesis chapter 21. It is the story of the birth of Isaac and the events that follow from there. The blessings for the reading are on page 170. And as we've done in past years, we'll be calling the aliyot by groups. So if you are a member of the group that I'm going to announce, we invite you to stand at your place and say the blessing before the reading with me, and then stay standing while David reads the portion, and then we'll join together in the blessing following the reading. The blessings again are on page 170. It's a pleasure to welcome David Wolf back to the Bima to read again this year. So our first aliyah is for the TCS Board of Directors. If you are a member of the Board of Directors, we invite you to rise for this aliyah. 1, 2, 3. Baruch et Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch Adonai Barak Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborah Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim. V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vadonai Bakarat Sarak Asher Amar Vayas Adonai L'Sarak Asher Diber Vatahar Vatel Saral Abraham Ben Lizkunav Amoed Asher Diber Oto Elohim Vayikra Avraham et Shem Beno Hanolad Lo Asher Yalda Lo Sarah Yitzchak Vayamal Avraham et Yitzchak Beno Ben Shmonat Yamim Kasher Tzivaoto Elohim Avraham ben Me'at Shana V'hivaled Lo et Yitzchak Beno Vatomer Sarah Tzechok Asali Elohim Kol HaShomea Yitzchak Li Vatomer Mi Milel Avraham Heni Gavanim Sarah Kelarti Ben Lizkunav Vayigdal Hayeled Vayigamal Vayas Avraham Mishte Gadol B'yom Yigamel et Yitzchak.
1, 2, 3. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Natan Eloheinu Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Thank you to our Board of Directors. In that first aliyah, Isaac was born, and so for this aliyah, we'd like to give the honor to anybody who has had in this past year a new child, or a grandchild, or a great-grandchild, or a wedding which may lead eventually to children. If something like that has happened in your family, not necessarily you yourself, but if it's happened in your family, we invite you to rise for this aliyah. All right, then let's try this. If you have children who don't live at home anymore but have come back to be with you for the holy days, we invite you to rise for this aliyah.
All right.
All right. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch et Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch Adonai Barak Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborah Olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vateres Sarai ben Agar HaMitzri Asher Yalda Avraham Yitzchak Vatomer El Avraham Garesh Amahazot ve'epena Ki lo yirash ben ha'amahazot עם בני עם יצחק, וירא הדבר מאוד בעיני אברהם על אודות בנו. ויאמר אלוהים אל אברהם, אל ירא בעיניך על הנער ועל אמתך, כל אשר תאמר אליך, שרה שמה וקולה, כי ביצחק יקרא לך זרע, וגם את בן האמה לגוי ישימנו, כי זרעך הוא. וישכם אברהם בבוקר, ויקח לחם וחמת מים, ויתן על הגר, שם על שכמה ואת הילד ושלחיה, ותלך ותטע במדבר באר שבע, ויאכלו המים מן החמת, ותשלך את הילד תחת אחד השיחים, ותלך ותשב לה מנגד, הרחק כי מתחווה קשת, כי היא אמרה אל אראה במות הילד, ותשב מנגד ותישא את קולה, ותבך.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Thank you. Isaac grows up in this reading. So if you became bar or bat mitzvah here at Temple Chai Shalom, or if you were confirmed here at Temple Chai Shalom, we invite you to have the honor of this aliyah of any age, adults who, adult bar mitzvah services, adult confirmation, anything like that. You are welcome for this aliyah as well, which begins on page 172 in the 9th line from the bottom, the last word of Hebrew in the 9th line from the bottom, and the 3rd paragraph of English on page 173. 1, 2, Baruch Adonai HaMorah.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMorah Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayishma Elohim ekol anar vayikra malach Elohim el hagar min hashamayim vayomer la malach hagar al tiri ki shama Elohim el kol anar basher hu sham קומי שאי את הנער, וחזיקי את ידך בו, כי לגוי גדול אשימנו. ויפקח אלוהים את עיניך, ותרא באר מים, ותלך ותמלא את החמת מים, ותשקה את הנער, ויהי אלוהים את הנער ויגדל, וישב במדבר, ויהי רובה קשת. וישב במדבר פרן, ותיקח לו אמו אישה מארץ מצרים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
It is customary while the Torah is out to offer a special blessing, a prayer on behalf of those who are ill, those who are struggling physically or spiritually or emotionally. Our prayer for healing is on page 179.
Mishabera avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength
Today in our TCS family, we think particularly of Phyllis Burke, Corey Brown, Arthur Campbell, Phyllis Dillon, Jane Dunlap, Terry Dunlop, Valerie Frank, Jennifer Galvin, David Glazer, Michael Gottfried, Marcia Hirsch, Mike Kamens, Cheryl Leahy, Nancy Lewis, Nancy Mayer, Paul Newfield, Sarah Newfield, Saul Payne, Kimberly Phillips, Gail Rosenberg, Jan Ruderman, Alicia Schreiber, Michael Schreiber, Cindy Sherman, Elaine Swartz, Yonina bat David HaKohen v'Sarah, Esther bat Chaim v'Goldi, Fegi bat Shlomo Nisan Halevi, Gittel bat David. If there's someone for whom you are particularly concerned, whose name you'd like to mention aloud, we invite you to do so now. We hold in our hearts all of our friends and loved ones who are ill.
Mishebera imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
For the honor of an aliyah to lift and dress the Torah, we call Adam Garber and Howard Wiseman. Please rise.
Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Morasha kehilat Yaakov, Morasha kehilat Yaakov, Morasha kehilat Yaakov, Torah tziva lanu Moshe.
Please be seated. We continue now with the Haftarah, the prophetic portion for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. The blessing before the reading is on page 182, and then the portion begins on page 183, and then the blessing after the reading is on page 192 is where it begins. So 182 is the blessing before, and then 183 is the portion. A pleasure to welcome back Randy Jelinek and Laurel Silverman to read for us today.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim, v'eretzav v'divrehem ha'ne'emarim ba'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen.
Vayehi ish echad min haramatayim sofim mechar Ephraim Ushmo Elkanah Ben Yeroham Ben Elihu Ben Tohu Ben Suv Ephrati Valo Shate Nashim Shem Achad Chana Vashem Hashenit Penina Vayehi lifnina yeladim, uchana ein yeladim. Va'ala ha'ish hahu me'iro miyamim yamima lahish tachavot v'lizboach l'Adonai sevaot v'shilo v'sham shanei v'nei Eli. Chafni ufei nachas kohanim l'Adonai vayehi hayom vayizbach Elkanah v'natan lifnina ishto ukol baneha uvnoteha manot uchana yitain mana achat apayim Ki et chana achev v'Adonai sagad rachma v'ki atzata sarata gam ka'as ba'avor hare'ima ki sagar Adonai ba'ad rachma yakein ya'aseh shana v'shana midei alota b'vet Adonai Kain taki sena vativ ke velo tokad.
Vayomer Elkanah, Vayomer la Elkanah Isha Chana lame tivki valame lot tochli V'lame yera levavech, halo anochi tov lach me'asara banim. V'takam chana acharei achla b'shilo v'acharei shato v'eli hakohen yoshev al hakisei al mezuzat hechal Adonai v'hi marat nafesh ותתפלל על אדוני ובכה תבכה ותדור נדר ותאמר אדוני צבאות ימראות תראה ואני אמתך וזכרתני ולא תשכח את אמתך ונתת לעמתך זרע אנשים ונתתי לאדוני כל ימי חייו ומורא לא יעלה על ראשו והיה כי הרבתה להתפלל לפני אדוני ואלי שומר פיה וחנה היא מדברת על ליבה רק שפתיה נאות וקולה לא ישמע ויחשביה אלי לשיכורה ויאמר עליה אלי עד מתי תשתחררי הסירי את יינך מעלייך וטען חנה ותאמר לא אדוני אישה קשת רוח אנוכי ויין ושכר לא שתיתי לשפוך את נפשי לפני אדוני אל תיתן את אמתך לפני בת בליעה כי מרוב שיחי וכעסי דיברתי עד הנה ויען אלי ויאמר לכי לשלום ואלוהי ישראל, ייתן את שאלתך אשר שאלת מאמו, ותאמר תמצא שפחתך חן בעיניך, ותלך האישה בדרכה ותאכל, ופניה לא היו לה עוד. וישכימו בבוקר, וישתחוו לפני אדוני, וישובו, ויבואו אל ביתם הרמתה, וידע קנה את חנה על אשתו, ויזכריה אדוני. ויהי לתקופות הימים, ותחנה ותלד בן, ותקרא שמו שמואל, כי מאדוני שאלתיו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ויעשה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם, כי המלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי היא בית חיינו, ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו, ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון בבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באליהו הנביא עבדך, ובמלכות בית אבי משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו, על כיסו לא ישב זר, ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו, כי בשם חדשך נשפט לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה ועל יום הזיכרון הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד, ודברך אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש השבת וישראל ויום הזיכרון.
Craig, I wish you had told me earlier that I was supposed to be riveting and thought-provoking. It might have changed things. When Golda Meir was Prime Minister of Israel in the early 1970s, she met with US President Richard Nixon. It is said that Nixon told Golda that he would trade any 3 American generals for Israeli General Moshe Dayan. Okay, she replied, I'll take General Motors, General Electric, and General Dynamic. As it turns out, Golda did not need to make that trade. In the last 50 years, Israel has become a technological powerhouse known as Startup Nation, renowned for innovation and creativity. Those developments help to drive a thriving economy and a standard of living unparalleled in the region. Israel's embrace of modern life has not been limited to the business world. Israel is on the cutting edge of culture, with world-class theater and art and cuisine as well. Israeli vineyards produce outstanding wines. And no, Manischewitz is not Israeli. Israel has been called the vegan capital of the world, and Israel's diversity can be seen most vividly in her people. The same country that holds Jerusalem, home to many strictly religious observant people, also holds Tel Aviv, which Out magazine called the gay capital of the Middle East. The same country where traditional religious practice restricts women's public visibility, already had a woman become prime minister almost 55 years ago. Walking on the same beach, one can see secular Israelis in their bathing suits playing paddleball, men with black hats, beards, and payas, accompanied by women with their hair covered and modest clothes pushing baby carriages, an Arab family enjoying a picnic, children of all skin tones splashing in the waves, a lesbian couple holding hands as they lie on their towels, tourists slathered in sunscreen or turning red from the Mediterranean sun. Jews from all over the world have made Aliyah to live in Israel. And not only Jews, Israel is home to many different populations: Muslims, Christians, Druze, Baha'i, Bedouin, among others. With all of its dynamic contradictions, life in modern Israel paints with a rich palette of colors. When Golda was prime minister, the idea that Israel would be so vibrant 50 years later would have seemed like a dream. Instead, Golda's Israel lived a nightmare. In October of 1973, on Yom Kippur, Israel was attacked simultaneously by the Syrians in the north and the Egyptians in the south. The current movie, Golda, focuses on her leadership during those anxious and terrible days. Those of us who were young or not yet born then may not know, and even some of us who lived through it may not fully remember, how close Israel came to being conquered that year. Quickly, the Syrians broke through Israeli defenses on the Golan Heights, while Egyptian troops crossed the Suez Canal and advanced several kilometers into the Sinai. Defense Minister Dayan reportedly prepared to announce the fall of the Third Temple, referring not to the ancient buildings in Jerusalem, but to the state itself. American Jews desperately urged the U.S. government to support and supply Israel. Jewish organizations raised hundreds of millions of dollars for the war effort. Some communities even arranged blood donation drives. And some American Jews flew to Israel to help however they could. A TCS member recently told me that they had been visiting Israel during that time, and they volunteered filling sandbags to shore up defensive positions. Miraculously, Israel turned the tide of the initial onslaught, and the United Nations declared a ceasefire after 3 weeks of fighting. Only 25 years after its founding, Israel had faced and somehow had survived a profound threat. 50 years later, many analysts of the current situation in Israel look back to 1973 to say that Israel right now is facing its greatest existential crisis since that moment. The difference this time, however, is that the threat is internal rather than external. You may have seen on television or read in the papers or online about the massive demonstrations in Israel against the proposed actions of the current government. Following elections last November, Benjamin Netanyahu assembled a governing coalition with a slim majority that includes several far-right extremists. The coalition started to put forward a package of what they call judicial reform proposals. In essence, these bills would reshape the judiciary, especially the High Court, by removing the right of the court to overturn legislation that contradicts Israel's basic laws. Because Israel does not have an actual constitution, the basic laws are the closest they come to enshrining the civil rights of all Israelis, including minorities. Currently, as in the United States, the High Court has the ability to protect those rights by declaring unconstitutional laws that infringe on them. This judicial review is essential to maintaining checks and balances between the branches of government. These changes would reshape that power dynamic, allowing the Knesset to dominate the judicial branch. If these bills were to pass, the Knesset would be able to make any law its majority wanted, leaving no recourse for the minority, not just the minority party, but the minority citizens who could be affected by these laws. This potential outcome points to the deeper danger behind the actions of the coalition. On the surface, a reasonable case could be made that some judicial reform is necessary. One could believe that legislators who are elected should have more power than judges who are appointed. One could also feel that the current makeup of the court does not reflect the diversity of Israeli society, and so changes to the process are in order. But, as Daniel Hartman, president of the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, argues, those legitimate perspectives have been co-opted by the far-right members of the government. Their true agenda, he says, is to enshrine the rule of the majority without being encumbered by human rights and international law. Commentator David Gordis concurs that these reforms are not about changing policy, but about changing the rules of the game, the fundamental nature of Israel. The policies they want to institute would shred the beautiful painting of Israel's diversity, dynamism, and democracy that I described a few moments ago. To give only a few examples, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, has a long record of virulent anti-Arab rhetoric and actions. He has called for Arab towns in the West Bank to be erased. The religious fundamentalists in the coalition seek to restrict women in the public square. One recent battleground in this area has been buses. Recently, drivers who did not approve of women's outfits have harangued them for being, in the driver's word, naked, or made the women sit in the back of the bus and cover themselves with blankets, or even denied them boarding while claiming that the bus was for men only. To be clear, all of these drivers acted illegally, and even Netanyahu condemned them for it. But his coalition partners continue to push in that direction. And speaking of Netanyahu, he has a vested personal interest in removing the court's supervision of the Knesset, because then the Knesset could pass a law granting him immunity against the corruption charges for which he is currently on trial. The Israeli author Yossi Klein Halevi calls this government, quote, a coalition among political zealots, extremists, religious fundamentalists, and the merely corrupt, as they launch one assault after another on the most basic norms of Israelis we've taken for granted, unquote. Israeli author David Grossman articulated the effect this government has already had on Israeli society as follows, quote, now a process of destabilization and disintegration is taking place, a shattering of the social contract and the deterioration of the military and the economy. Not only has the progress been halted, but the regression is intensifying to reactionary attitudes of discrimination and racism, to the exclusion of women and LGBTQ people and Arabs, to ignorance and boorishness as a positive value, unquote. Since the court is the only check on the coalition's power, argues journalist Mati Friedman, the judicial overhaul proposals are not really the main issue. The overhaul is merely a tool that the government is using to remove the obstacle to its plans. What is at stake is not merely the balance of power in Israel, but Israel's character as a country. They want to erase the multicolored palette of modern Israel and draw only in black and white. Consequently, These proposals have triggered tremendous upheaval across Israeli society. Economic leaders have warned of financial repercussions, and services like Moody's have already downgraded Israel's rating. The Israeli army has seen thousands of reservists refusing to report for their service. Halevi worries that many of the people who have made Israel such a success story, technologically, medically, culturally, will now leave Israel. Whereas in the past, people have moved out of Israel with regret, this exodus would be the first large-scale ideological emigration in Israel's history. He calls it an existential threat, and he is not the only one. Grossman wrote, quote, "For the first time in years, perhaps since the Yom Kippur War, we encountered the thin trickle of existential fear. Like a tightrope walker who suddenly looks at his shoes and then at the abyss, we are becoming increasingly aware of the fragility of our existence here, of the sense that the ground is falling out from beneath our feet. And lest we be tempted to think that this reaction is merely the unhinged panic of the defeated left wing, the author Naomi Reagan, who is certainly not a liberal, wrote that this country is as close as it has ever been to civil war. Her assessment was echoed by a poll taken in late July, which reported that 56% of Israelis fear that civil war may be coming. And yet, many Israeli observers who criticize the government's actions see great potential in these dangerous days. Specifically, out of the curse of these proposed changes has arisen the blessing of a passionately participatory citizenry that is actively affirming their vision of a state that is both Jewish and democratic. The 12th century scholar Maimonides called the shofar an alarm that awakens us from our year-long slumber. These proposals have roused Israelis from their comfortable inertia. This crisis has catalyzed Israelis' political education and involvement. Reform rabbi and member of Knesset Gilad Kariv quips that now all Israelis have become constitutional scholars, and that awareness and engagement has birthed a tremendous protest movement. The Israeli police estimate that some 7 million Israelis have participated in these protests. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets on Saturday nights for 36 weeks in a row. That is the equivalent of 16 to 20 million Americans coming out every week for 9 months. Astonishing, when many Americans can hardly be bothered to take half an hour to go vote once a year. Some government supporters have suggested that the protests themselves are anti-democratic. Former Israeli ambassador to the US, Ron Dermer, who is now the Minister of Strategic Affairs, claims that the government was elected with a mandate, and it is simply doing the will of the people. Thus, the protests are attempting to overturn the results of the election. But Dermer and others ignore the fact that Israel's system of allocating Knesset seats can magnify small margins to give the illusion of a resounding victory, similar to how gerrymandering in the United States can turn a close popular vote into a wide disparity in actual legislators. In fact, the parties in the governing coalition only received an aggregate 48.4% of the popular vote, and Netanyahu's Likud party only got 23%. Hardly a solid mandate for transformational change. Also, these judicial proposals never came up for meaningful debate or discussion during the campaign. They took the country by surprise. Those who voted for the coalition parties did not realize it was a bait and switch. The protesters are not just the defeated left wing, but encompass the center and even some on the right as well. Polls this summer suggested that 30% of the coalition voters would no longer vote for them. And if an election were held now, they would lose in a landslide. As Halevi says, the protesters' point is that although the coalition was democratically elected, they are not allowed to use their positions to dismantle the institutions of democracy or the ethos of democracy. Israelis feel a profound sense of personal responsibility for the state. They will demonstrate and argue and fight to preserve what they believe Israel should be. One of the leading protest groups is veterans of the 1973 war, who protected the state with their bodies then and are protecting the state with their voices now. Two primary symbols of the protests are the Israeli flag and Israel's Declaration of Independence. These emblems reinforce support for Israel as a state while criticizing current governmental policy, emphasizing the need for the country to live up to its founding values. Although the demonstrations began in defense of Israel's democratic character, they have come to encompass the broader issues of human rights and equality articulated in the Declaration. Israelis have awakened to the issues that have festered beneath the surface for a long time, including the special benefits that ultra-Orthodox receive and settler violence against the Palestinians. And the tremendous size and persistence of these protests suggests that what Halevi calls the vast amorphous center is now coalescing into a durable majority, which Hartman describes as, quote, a new coalition formed around the recognition that the Jewish state is not just about defensible borders, but a state where democracy counts, with protections for human rights, rights of women, state and religion, LGBTQ, and Israeli-Palestinian rights too. That would be a great blessing indeed. But this optimistic vision is not guaranteed to come to fruition. Making it happen will require engagement and investment from supportive Jews not only in Israel, but in the diaspora as well. Some people might wonder why I chose to talk about Israeli domestic politics this morning. It is an internal Israeli issue after all. Maybe only those who live in Israel should speak about it. While it is true that only Israeli citizens can vote in Israeli elections, the premise and promise of Zionism is that Israel is a home for all Jews, and so we are all entitled to have an opinion and to argue for our position. The protesters themselves are urging us to raise our voices. In February, Friedman, Gordis, and Halevi wrote an open letter to Israel's friends in North America, saying, quote, Israel belongs first of all to its citizens, and they have the final word. But Israel also matters to the entire Jewish people. You have both the right and the responsibility to speak up. Israeli leaders need to hear where you stand. We and our families are in the streets every week demanding the government end its war against our democratic values and institutions. We need your voice to help us preserve Israel as a state both Jewish and democratic, unquote. As American Jews came to Israel's defense in 1973, so we must rally now. Gordis argues that to stay silent is to be on the wrong side of history. We must make clear that we are a worldwide Jewish community committed to justice and equality. We are all part of the Jewish family. When a family member is in trouble, we do not stand idly by. We get them the help that they need. Family does not abandon family. And equally important, family should not enable family. We have to tell our family members the truth about their behavior, even when they are wrong, and especially if we can stop them from continuing down a dangerous path. So what should we, American relatives, do to support our Israeli family in this time of crisis? I'm going to suggest 3 specific actions. First, we should educate ourselves. We must understand the issues involved. Some people might think this sermon has been long. Believe me when I say I have barely scratched the surface. On Monday, I am going to send out an email with suggested resources, articles, videos, and webinars that have informed my thinking in more depth than I could convey today. I encourage you to read and watch them, and then to keep reading and watching. One way to do that comes this coming Wednesday, when the Shalom Hartman Institute, where I have studied during my sabbatical the past 2 summers, holds an online teach-in from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. with 45-minute sessions starting every hour, led by scholars bringing traditional Jewish texts to bear on the urgent questions facing Israeli democracy and society. A link with more information on that program will be in the email as well. Second, for those who want to support this cause in a more concrete way, I encourage you to donate to those who are on the front lines. The religious and nationalist fundamentalists in Israel receive enormous amounts of financial and strategic support from like-minded American Jews. Those of us who value a democratic, pluralistic, compassionate Israel must do the same. I will include in the email links to some recommended organizations that help organize and fund the protests, that pursue legal recourse against acts of racism, misogyny, and discrimination of all kinds, and that support religious pluralism in Israel. And third, the best action we can take is to go visit, to strengthen our own connection to the land and people of Israel. I am arranging a fabulous congregational trip for this coming summer. We are going to experience Israel through its contemporary creativity, its spiritual diversity, its archaeological history, and its natural beauty. We will meet people from many different groups in Israeli society, and we will learn about Israel's amazing strengths and her persistent challenges. We will see modern miracles and ancient wonders and everything in between. Let's go learn why it is worth caring about Israel's future. In the foyer, there is a big banner and smaller flyers. Please take the smaller flyers and plan to come with me next summer. Earlier this year, the protests succeeded in convincing Netanyahu to put most of the proposals on hold temporarily. But they will be back on the agenda this fall. In recent weeks, the right-wing rhetoric has ramped up once more. It is time to sound the shofar, to wake up, to stand up for the Jewish values of democracy, pluralism, and compassion. As Israel miraculously survived the crisis of 1973, so will she survive this crisis 50 years later if we help her to do so. May this new year be for us and for Israel a Shana Tova, a good year, a year of goodness. Amen. It is time to sound the shofar. Page 196, we begin the service for the shofar. Page 196. Sometimes God is a fortress to us, or a fire in a thorn bush that burns without consuming. Sometimes God is a beloved bridegroom, and sometimes a well of water in a dry and thirsty land. At this season, God appears to us in three guises: as a majestic ruler, as rememberer, and in the cry of the shofar. In each image, God comes to us with questions. God as ruler, or more accurately, God as ruler of the rulers of rulers, ruler of the emperors, the superpowers, creator and judge, asks, what is the difference between the way you govern and are governed now and the way you would live under my care, by my values? Can you, for a moment, see your world through my eyes and imagine it free of injustice and greed, oppression and fanaticism? God as rememberer asks, is there any relationship possible without memory, without joys and pains, without honesty and accountability? How shall you and I remember each other? God in the cry of the shofar asks, am I present to you in the blaring of trumpets, and as well in the thinness of silence? The shofar cries, open your soul, the time of revelation is now. And the shofar cries, freedom, redemption is coming. Can you envision redemption, you battered and exhausted inhabitants of this turbulent world? Try. The shofar is about to sound. It's my pleasure to call Ken Golden, our shofar blower extraordinaire, back up to the bima. As we continue on page 198, reflecting on God as ruler. Today marks the birthday of the world. Today we affirm our faith that the world makes sense, that there is design and purpose, order and beauty within it. And we affirm that we, who are made in God's image, are called upon to continue the work of creation, to finish the task of bringing order out of chaos, light where there is darkness, understanding where there is ignorance, and hope where there is despair. Page 197, please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Page 202.
ברוך אתה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ מקדש השבת וישראל ויום הזיכרון.
Tekiah. Shivarim Trua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shivarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. So we turn to page 205 and reflect on God as rememberer. As you remembered Noah and every creature on board with him, so too remember us upon the flood of cruelty that threatens this frail ark, which is our world. As in Egypt you heard our cries and remembered there your pact with those who came before us, so too remember us, oppressed by fears and pharaohs that turn living waters into blood. As you instructed Jeremiah, whisper to the people. I remember how close we were in the wilderness, so too remember now to whisper to us the words and acts through which we may embrace our enemies in peace. Page 206, please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai zocher habrit tikiyah shivarim teruah tikiyah tikiyah shivarim tikiyah tikiyah teruah tikiyah.
Please be seated. On page 208, we reflect on God and the sound of the shofar. There are sounds which first we heard as children, which have engraved themselves like ancient riverbeds long dry into our inner ear. Years later, when we've grown, those early sounds will open up those ancient streams, and the place and moment of that early music will flow again across our memory, and we are at once transported there, splashing in the cooling spray like the children we still are, with all the joy and playfulness and awe we thought had dried up in our long-sought maturity. Buried even deeper in us than our childhood is the childhood of our people, when we were wandering and playing at the foot of Sinai, full of wonder and confusion, as the cloud appeared, and a holy fire, and thunder voices out of heaven, and the sounds of a shofar. Each year when the shofar sounds for us again, the cloud appears above the riverbed of memory, and we know that if sufficient wonder and confusion fill our minds, the holy fire will burn once more, and voices from our modest shofar will thunder out of heaven once again. If only we can listen, the moment and the place will flow again, and we can splash with the child our people was at the beginning in the stream. Page 210, please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai shomea kol truat amo Yisrael berachamim
Tekiah, Shivarim Truah, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shivarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah Gedolah. Please be seated. Page 211.
Areshet Sifatenu, Areshet Sifatenu, Yerav Lefanecha Eram Benisa, Mevinu Mazim, Mevinu Mazim, Mabitu Makshiv, Mabitu Makshiv. Mevinu mazim, mabitu makshim, lekol, 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 tekiyatenu, utekabel berachamim, berachamim uveratzon, utkabel berachamim, berachamim uveratzon. Seder, 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 shofroteinu.
We are ready now to return the Torah scroll to the ark. We turn to page 213, and we rise.
Eitz chaim hi, b'machazikim ba, betomcheha, me'ushar deracheha, tachenoam, v'chol netivoteha, shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem.
Page 214, Aleinu.
Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, ואלוהינו אין עוד. אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. echad, Ushemo echad.
Please be seated. As we prepare for Kaddish, we recall the loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Today, our congregational family remembers with special affection our loved ones whose yahrzeit will occur this coming week. James Uditsky, father of Esther Jacobs; Anne M. Milton, mother-in-law of Gloria Aronson; Teresa J. Hanley, mother of Michael Hanley; Frank Meyerhoff, father of Natalie Berkowitz; Francis Bortugno, father of Denise Morgan; Joanna Wall, sister of Alicia Dancy; Esther Perlman Kane, mother of Sally Levy; Anita Turtletaub, mother of Bertha Shear; and my aunt, Sarah Ann Lipson. If you are remembering someone today, we invite you to say that person's name aloud now. Zichronam livracha. May the memories of all our dear ones be a blessing. If you're saying Kaddish in someone's memory today, we ask you to rise now. In loving support of the mourners, we rise as a congregation. In gratitude to God for the gift of the lives of their loved ones, those who are in mourning and those remembering someone, say Kaddish on page 216.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei chon v'yomei chon, uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'yizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam olomei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei d'kudshah b'richu, La'ela, la'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and comfort all of the bereaved. And we say, Amen. Amen.
Please be seated. Just a few brief announcements. As you leave today, please leave your books and your supplements on your seats. That will help us get the sanctuary ready for tomorrow. You also have a one-page handout that describes many upcoming great events for the next few weeks. You are welcome to take it home if you would like, so you can remember those dates and put them on your calendar. Otherwise, please leave it on your seats as well. As you leave, members of our Social Action Committee Torch and our teenagers from Texi will be handing out empty shopping bags for our annual food drive to be donated to the Charity Guild. Please return them full on Yom Kippur with non-perishable food only. Thank you to Torch and to Texi for helping us to fulfill this mitzvah. Tomorrow morning, our service for the second day of Rosh Hashanah begins at 9:30 a.m. Following that service, at 12:15, we will gather for a short and lovely Tashlich service at Shovel Shop Pond as we symbolically cast away our sins of the past year. Although traditionally breadcrumbs are thrown for Tashlich, in recent years, many communities, including TCS, have switched to bird seed or other seeds because bread can actually be harmful to the wildlife that eat it. So please bring seeds instead of bread. The ritual committee will have extra seeds available for anyone who needs some extra sins. Thank you for that, those of you who. All right. Dogs on leash are also welcome at Tashlich. Please feel free as well to bring a picnic lunch or a beach chair for sitting and schmoozing, or enjoy walking the grounds. It should be a beautiful day tomorrow. The address of the pond can be found on your tickets. A reminder that this coming Shabbat services will begin at 7:30 on Friday. Thank you, Laurel, for leading them for us on Friday. And then next Sunday, our Erev Yom Kippur services begin at 7:15 p.m. Even though we have just started the holy days, it is not too early to think about our community break fast, which is one of the highlights of our High Holy Day experience, which Sisterhood is organizing again this year. Thank you, Sisterhood. Please plan to join us at the end of Yom Kippur, and please plan to bring something. An email with a link to a sign-up genius and more information will go out on Monday as well. A special thank you to Ken Golden for awakening our souls with the sound of the shofar, and to David Wolf as well, who continues to breathe life into the Torah scroll for us. Thanks again to Merrill Levinson, Elaine Barger, the Ritual Committee chaired by Heather Lambrecht and Deb Schechter, the parking crew, and all of the many TCS staff and volunteers who have worked so diligently behind the scenes to prepare for this year's High Holy Days. And one more reminder to take the small flyers next to the big banner advertising next summer's Israel trip. Please join us. On page 220, our final song, Adon Olam.
Adon Olam Asher Mala B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa V'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Hoveh Ve'hu Yiyeh V'tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'ein Sheni Ve'hamshilo Ve'hachbira Ve'li Reshit Ve'li Tachlit Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'hamisra Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai Goali Ve'tzur Chevli Ve'eit Zahara Ve'hu Nisi Umanosli Ve'nat Kosi Ve'yom Ekra Ve'yado Afdid Ruchi Ve'eti Sham Ve'aira Ve'im Ruchi Geviati Adonai Li Ve'lo Hira.
Page 217. We came together here to search for truth, to face a judgment on ourselves, our people, on the world which helps us grow and helps us stray. In the time before we gather once again, let us not relent in searching how we might become the people God created us to be. Though we shall be separated from each other, let us be conscious of each other's presence. For in the compassionate presence of those whose prayers we've shared today, we can grow closer to the compassionate presence of the God who wants to judge us worthy of a good, sweet year, a year of health and fulfillment, a year of peace. L'Shana Tova u'Mituka, may we all have a good and sweet new year.
L'Shana Tova